Thank God.
Dr. Oz, I cannot wait to get your take on this. Out where I live, and I'm sure everywhere across the country, in school districts, the tensions are very, very high between the kids wearing masks and kids not wearing masks. The New York State states that kids should wear masks. Now, we've been told that masks pretty much don't work, right? The cloth masks, especially that these kids use, and also that children are not affected by the COVID as much as anybody else. In fact, they're minimally affected by it. So what is your take, or what is your opinion? Should kids be mandated to wear masks in school or not?
Everything you said is sensible and is very supportive. Here's the way I think about masks in schools. Although I don't think they provide a huge benefit, we'd all feel pretty badly if the kids couldn't continue in the classroom because they had an outbreak and we thought maybe if they'd been wearing a mask it would have helped. Because the primary goal that I would have is getting kids back in school. We have devastated a generation of children by holding them back 18 months, especially children in more needy neighborhoods. They're not keeping up. They really haven't been able to get taught.
Hello, Doug.
Good morning. Give me 5 minutes.
Yeah, take your time. I'm in no rush here.
Okay. Let's see. We are on 14A, about halfway down, a little more than halfway down. Gemara starts Rav Sheshas. Let's see. Rav Sheshas. It's looks like about 14 lines up from the bottom. So we've been talking about grinding spices, right? And yesterday we dealt with the difference between salt and other spices. Salt has two characteristics that make it possibly more problematic to grind on Yom Tov. A, you knew you were going to need salt if you're going to cook today because you use salt in everything. And B, salt you can do in advance because it doesn't lose its potency, unlike other spices where if you grind it the day before, it's not as tasty, not as strong. All right, so now we have a few cases. Rav Sheshas shama kol buchna. Rav Sheshas heard the sound of a pestle, a mortar and pestle. Amar, and he said, "Hi," and it was Yom Tov. Amar, he said, "Hi, love me, gavai de Beitzah." That sound that we hear of somebody grinding spices definitely not coming from my house, because in my house they wouldn't be crushing salt. Vidolma atzliya atzle. So the Gemara says, well, wait, one of the solutions we had was that you could still grind salt if you do it with some kind of a change in the usual way, like not having which one is the mortar? I can't remember. The mortar is the stick or the bowl, but whatever. With not having the bowl straight on the flat on the table, but turning it on its side, so it's still effective, but it's just doing it in a different way to remind yourself that it's Yom Tov, to make it a little different. So maybe they were doing that, and maybe that's the sound he heard. How is he so sure that it wasn't from his house? So Gemara says the Shamei Dahavat Salu Kale, because he heard that it was a clear sound of it was a classic mortar and pestle sound. There was no it would have affected the sound if somebody were holding it in a different way. Vidilma Tavlin Havu. Maybe it wasn't salt. Maybe it was other spices. And for the two reasons we just said, you could do spices on Yom Tov without a shinoi. So where it says Tavlin Nabuchem Nabeach Kalai, they also make a different sound than salt. Okay, so he had pretty sharp hearing. And actually, Rav Sheshas, if I remember correctly, was blind. And perhaps he had sharper hearing as a result. I don't know if that is a myth or not, but clearly he could, he felt that he could really discern very fine differences in sound. Rabbi taught, "Ein osin tisne, ve'en koshim b'machteshes." You can't make tisne. So what is tisne? It's some kind of a grits that you make from wheat. You split the wheat into quarters according to the note here. So pounding them that way to make grits is excessive effort, and that's why you shouldn't do that on Yom Tov. And also, you can't crush things in a mortar on Yom Tov, as we've already seen. So Gemara says, "Tarte, what are these the same?" Like, make up your mind. If you can't crush anything in a mortar, then you certainly can't use a mortar to make tisni and to make grits. And if it's only grits, then you can crush other things in a mortar. These are kind of contradictory statements. Hachikamar, this is what it means. Ma tam einosin tisni. You can't make grits. You can't grind wheat into grits. Why not? Because it's something you do in a mortar, and in general, you can't do things you can't crush things in a mortar on Yom Tov. V'lema ein koshim b'machteshes. But you have to mention the grits for it all. Just say, don't crush things in mortar. You don't have to list individual things if you're going to have a blanket rule. My answer is Itani ein koshim b'machteshes. If we had done so, Havamina would have thought, oh, what are we talking about? A big mortar. Maybe I would have thought, yeah, if it says don't use a mortar, it means a big mortar, but maybe I could use a small mortar. So by saying that don't crush grits, which apparently was done in a small mortar, because you can't use a mortar. So now we've got all the bases covered. But we do have a source that says specifically, don't use a large mortar on Yom Tov, but you can use a small one. So my answer is, Rabbi Kitanya Nami Masnisa. Yeah, actually, our Mishnah, the first Mishnah we quoted means don't use a big one. And Tisne actually you would be able to use when the Mishnah says don't make Tisne, it means in a large mortar. Okay, so it's not a very satisfactory answer, but he has to resolve the contradiction, because if it's true that you can use a small mortar, so you should be able to use a small mortar for grits. And Abai says, indeed, that's the case. It's only a large mortar that's prohibited. Not a very satisfactory answer, but Rava has a different answer. Rava Amar, Lakasha Halanda Halahu. Oh, we're talking about customs in two different places. One in Babylonia and the other in Palestine. And perhaps the practice of how you crushed grits was different in the two.
Sorry, 1 second. Pardon.
Perhaps the practice of how they crush grits was different in the two places. So when it says don't crush grit, so the rule is you can use a small mortar. The place where it says you can don't crush grits, that would be where they use a small mortar. Okay. Rav Papi Ikla Leve Mar Shmuel. Rav Papa came to the house of Mar Shmuel on Yom Tov. I silly daisa. They brought him daisa, which I believe is like a cooked cereal, cooked grits. Well, he didn't eat it because he figured that, oh, they made this for me on Yom Tov, and I don't think that you're allowed to grind things on Yom Tov. So Gemara says, well, maybe they made it on Yom Tov. They used a small mortar, which is permitted. So Gemara says, he saw that the grain was very fine. It was very like fine flour, so you can't get that effect in a small mortar. They must have been using a big mortar, and that's why he didn't eat it. The do it, but maybe they ground it the day before, right? So the Chazir have a kalif tsiare. He saw that there was kind of a white. It was streaked white, so that would indicate somehow that it had been freshly ground. That's why he didn't eat it on Yom Tov. Or you could say, Shani Be'Mar Shmuel de Ika Pritzusa Da'ave. Maybe that even in the house of Mar Shmuel, there were, you could translate this as a lot of servants, or maybe they were, they were like not such, they took a lot of liberties, these servants. So Rav Papi didn't trust the servants at the house of Mar Shmuel. Presumably they were, he felt that, sure, Rav Papi would never do this, but I know that his servants are kind of neglectful of the rules, and so they must, perhaps they did it wrong. Okay, next mission. If you are sorting through beans on Yom Tov. So like you don't have this with modern packaging, but actually you even do. Like sometimes the instructions in the recipe will tell you to pick over the lentils or whatever, the beans, to remove any debris of whatever kind. So can you do that on Yom Tov? Because borer, choosing things in certain ways is prohibited. So Beis Shammai omrim borer ochel v'ochel. You separate the food, you take the food away from the debris, and then you can eat it. Beis Hillel omrim borer kedarko. You do it however you usually do it, right? You could take the debris out of the food, right? So there's a general rule. The way I believe it's practiced today is that there's 3 criteria. Hold on 1 sec. In general, there's 3 ways in which or 3 conditions for which borer is permitted. One is it has to be for immediate use, and it has to be done by hand, not with a special tool. And you're supposed to take the good stuff away out of the bad stuff rather than the other way around. So here we see this application is disputed by Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai says, yeah, you have to take the food out of the debris, and Beis Hillel says you can do it the other way around too. It's fine. And you can do it in your lap, and you can use a funnel or a big plate, which is kind of a of a tool, but not like a tool, but not like a professional quality tool, of a low, but top love, a low enough of a low kvar. You can't use a board or a sieve, which is kind of more like a professional tool for that. You can't use that on Yom Tov. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel says, Af madiach v'shola. You can also rinse and skim. So that would be definitely removing the debris from the food. Tanya. So Gemara brings Beitzah. Amar and Gamliel. In what case is Beis Hillel saying that you can take out the debris from the food? That's if there's more food than debris, which is usually the case. But if it's mostly debris and just a few good beans in there, then everybody says you have to take out the food and out of the debris. So Gemara says, what, really? Like if there's more debris than food, does anybody say you could pick it over? It's like the whole thing is muksa because it's not considered something edible since there's so much debris there. Gemara says lotzricha zenafish betircha v'zutar b'shiura. If what we're talking about is where it's there isn't that much debris, but it's difficult to remove. So when the Mishnah said that there's more debris than food, what it really meant was it's a lot of effort to remove the debris from the food, not that there's volume wise. Rabbi Gamliel, now the end of the Mishnah said that Rabbi Gamliel said you can even rinse and skim the mixture. Tanya is a supporting Beitzah. Amar Blazer said, this is how the practice was in the house of Rabbi Gamliel. They bring a pail full of lentils, and pour water on it. So then the debris would float to the top, and the lentils would stay at the bottom, and so you could just skim off the debris. But Tanya Ipcha, so Gemara says, wait, the different Beitzah has it the other way around, that the lentils would rise and the debris would sink. So Gemara says, no, haba afra, ha begile. It depends what kind of debris we're talking about, right? If it's kind of dust. One second. Yeah, if it's like dirt, then the dirt would sink to the bottom. But if it was like straw or I don't know what to call it, lighter items, not earth, but leaves or whatever, then they would float. So different situations, there are different stories recording the different situations. In some cases, the debris would sink to the bottom. In some cases, it would float to the top. Either way, the idea was that was a good strategy for removing the debris without using a professional tool. Next Mishnah. Beishami Omrim. Beishami says, "Ein mishalchin b'Yom Tov." You can't send gifts to people on Yom Tov. Ella manos. But what you can do is you can send them like individual meals, right? You can send somebody a meal, but you can't send him something that is like for him to keep for after Yom Tov. No, Beishami Omrim. You can send an animal, whether it's a live animal or a slaughtered animal, since it's suitable for consumption. You can send it on Yom Tov. And you can send wine, oil, flour, beans of a lotua, but not raw grain. Because you can't use the grain yet; it's not suitable yet for eating. You'd have to grind it, which you can't do on Yom Tov. Rabbi Shimon Matir B'Tua. Rabbi Shimon says, yeah, you can send raw grain because, as we'll see, you can first cook it and then you could use a small mortar to grind it. Okay, so he had a recipe that said, yeah, I can use raw grain to eat on Yom Tov. So that's why he felt that you could send grain to somebody on Yom Tov. Tanya Rabbi Yechiel taught, you can send somebody these gifts, right? The ones that are enumerated in the Mishnah that are permissible, but you can't send like a whole caravan, a whole delegation of people carrying it there. The explanation is it appears like like you're sending something to a loading dock, right? Like you can't send, a big truck over to deliver someone's gifts because that looks like you're transacting business. It doesn't look like a personal, a personal gift. Tana, and what's this entourage? That means not less than 3 people. So 3 or more people delivering your gift makes it looks like a business transaction. But if you send it with 1 or 2 people, then it's clearly personal. By Rashi asked, Tlasa Gavre, Tlasa Mine. What about, let's say you have a 3-course dinner, and every person is in the delegation is carrying 1 course. So what about that? Does that look like a business transaction, or does it just look like you're sending somebody a nice 3-course dinner? Take Mar says, I don't know. We'll let that lie. Rav Shimon so we saw that Rav Shimon says you can send raw grain because he had a recipe where you could use it on Yom Tov. Tanya, we have a Beitzah. Rav Shimon ludios. For example, wheat to make this dish, which, as I described, is something that you can make from raw wheat without having to grind it first. Se'orim litim behamton. You can send barley because barley you could just give raw to your animal. And adashim lasses men resisin. And lentils you could cook them before you crush them, so that also to make these things called resisin, which translates here as groats, which I don't really know what those are, although I have heard the word. But basically the idea is that if it is usable in its current form without having to do a prohibited Yom Tov activity to use it, then you can send it to someone as a gift on Yom Tov. Next Mishnah, Mishalchim Kalim, you can send clothes to somebody on Yom Tov as a gift, Bein Tefurim, Bein Shen and Turim, whether they are sewn or not sewn. Like you could even send the raw material. And even if it has kilayim, if it has a forbidden mixture of wool and silk, you can still send it. The hain was sarchamoid because they could be used on the festival. So obviously you can't wear those clothes, but you could use them for, I don't know, a tablecloth or something. Well, the Gemara will ask that in a minute. Like how come you can use what are you going to use kilayim for? Avalo sandal hamasumar. You can't send a sandal with nails in it, with spikes, okay, cleats or whatever. We'll see why in the Gemara. Velo mino sheno tafar, and you can't send an unprocessed shoe, like the leather for a shoe that hasn't been sewn up into a shoe. Or you don't wear aflo mino lavan. You can't even send a white shoe. Because people at home, if you gave them the leather and the thread, they could fashion a shoe. But if you're talking about a white leather, a white shoe material, that needs polish, right? Nobody's going to wear that. Before you wear it, you're gonna shine it or you're gonna color it. You can't dye things on Yom Tov. So, this is the rule for all these things. Kol shen neosin so whatever you can shen neosin bo, anything that you could use as is on Yom Tov, or not necessarily as is, but without violating a Yom Tov rule. Be Yom Tov Mishalchin also, you can send it on Yom Tov. That's the pretty obvious rule. So now the Gemara is going to investigate all these different cases. Bishlama Tefurin. I understand that you can send clothes that are finished, right? Chazul Malbush, because somebody could wear them on Yom Tov. Shein Tefurin Nami. I even understand you could send unfinished clothes. Chazul Kasuye, because you could still use it as you could drape it on yourself. It doesn't have to be a finished suit. You could still use the material to wrap around yourself. But what are you going to use kilayim, which you can't wear under any circumstances? What could you use them for on Yom Tov? Maybe you could fold it up and use it as a cushion. But but we have a brisa, lo yalel, when it says don't use this mixture of wool and linen. I said silk before, that was incorrect. Wool and linen. Lo yalel, the says should not go up on you. It's an odd phrase for don't wear it. But you can put it under you, right? You don't put it up on you, but you could put it down on you. But the rabbi says don't do that anyway. Shema tikarech bonima al basaro, because in the process of folding it up and putting it under yourself as a cushion, maybe a thread will kind of remain wrapped around your leg or something, and turns out you'll be wearing it in a sense. So that's why we don't. That's why they said don't use it even as a cushion. So, and the Gemara says, well, maybe you want to say like, wear something else between you and this kilayim cushion. That could alleviate your concern that it might be partly wrapped on you. I'm not quite sure how that works. Like maybe if you would cover the whole cushion with something else, that might work. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Hazi, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Amar Rabbi Yossi ben Shmuel, Amar Rabbi Mishum Kahal the Kadisha Yerushalayim. This long list of sources that stretch back to the holy congregation of Jerusalem. Afilu Esther Matzon Zo al Gavizu, even if there's 10 like covers on it, one on top of the other, the Kilayim Tachteim, and the forbidden garment is below, serving as a cushion. Also, you can't sleep on them. So why can you send? So the bottom line is there is no use for this kilayim garment. Like, what are you sending it for? How come you can send it on Yom Tov? Ella bevilan. So we're talking about something that you wouldn't necessarily wear, but there's no problem with using a kilayim material as a curtain, for example. That's not an article of clothing. You're not wearing it. So since you can use it for that on Yom Tov, you can send it on Yom Tov as a gift. So Gemara says, well, Amar Ula, doesn't Ula say, Amru Vilan Tame? Why did they say that a curtain becomes Tame and it's not considered a wall? So the wall of a house, if there's a dead body in the house or in the room, so the airspace becomes contaminated by Tuma, but not the wall. But a curtain, the Rabbi Ula says, is not considered a wall. It's part of the airspace, or it's within the airspace, and so it becomes tamei if a dead body is there. Because you can't consider it a wall, because the person who's sitting there in the room, he's going to use this curtain to kind of wrap himself up and keep warm. If that's the case, if we're concerned that people might wrap themselves in a curtain, right, then the question is obvious, right? Then how can you send this on Yom Tov? Even if it's to be used as a curtain, there's still a concern. You can't use a kilayim curtain because somebody might wrap themselves. Ella Bikashi. So the Gemara says, well, when we say kilayim, when we say it's a wool linen mixture, it's a stiff material. It's something that can't be clothing. It can't be wrapped around yourself because it's too stiff, so it won't provide warmth. So those you can sit on. And the Chihad Yamar of Huna Rabbi Yeshua, here's the support from Rav Huna. Hai namta gamda denera sharia. You're allowed to sit on this hard material that they use in Narash, a place. You can use it even if it's kilayim, because again, the same thing. It's stiff. You can't wrap it around yourself. You can't use it as clothing, so it's fine. So that's the kind of thing that even if it's kilayim, you can send it to somebody on Yom Tov. Amar Papa. Ardlin ein behem mishum kilayim, and also ardlin. This is let's see. People would place these under their shoes and attach goat leather beneath them. The section near the heel is sometimes made of wool, so kind of a foot pad, maybe like a Dr. Scholl's kind of thing. You can that can be kilayim, because again, that's not the kind of thing that it is possible to use to wrap yourself in as clothing. Amarava, Hane Tsurare de Pshite. These are coin pouches, which are made of, if they're made from kilayim, that's not clothing, and it does not have a prohibition of wool and linen. The bizrane, but bags used for holding seeds, yeshvan mishum kilayim, they are. Okay, so you know, a coin pouch is going to be of a thicker material, and it's not the kind of thing that can be used as any kind of utility other than what it's for. But a seed bag, you know, if it's empty, you might wrap it around yourself. That does have the rules of kilayim. Sorry, that's a good line. Yes, but Ravashi says, he says, no, even the seed bag is okay to have of kilayim. That's not the normal way that people use them. Okay, so if you take something that's clearly not an article of clothing, but it's made of kilayim, and you wrap it around yourself, that's not considered wearing it either, and that's okay if it's kilayim. Okay, now here's an interesting passage. Is it? Yes, it doesn't. It refers to the obliquely. So I will mention this story. There's a story elsewhere in the Gemara. Or is it? Does it say here? I don't think it brings the story here. So there was some kind of an incident where people were hiding from an enemy of some kind in a cave, and they were wearing, or some of them at least were wearing, these hobnailed boots. And basically, there was some kind of a panic, and in the rush, people got trampled, and it was Shabbos, by the way. So the rabbis made a rule. This is kind of typical of, you know, it's kind of like the TSA, because there was one time there was a shoe bomber, so now you have to take off your shoes to get in the airplane, right? So because this happened once on Shabbos, and they, you know, tragedy ensued. So the rabbi said, no more wearing, you know, boots with nails on Shabbos, because look what happened and people got killed. So lo sandal hamasumar, you can't wear a nailed shoe on Yom Tov, or you can't send it somebody on Yom Tov. Sandal hamasumar, my time, oh, why not? Mishum masa shahaya, because of that incident that I just referred to. Amarabai, sandal hamasumar, asur lenala, you can't wear a nailed boot on Shabbos or Yom Tov. Mutar l'taltala, but you can carry it. So in other words, it's not muktzah, but you're not allowed to wear it. You can't wear it because of the story that happened. But since the Mishnah tells you you can't send this as a gift either, because it's not something that can be worn on Yom Tov, but the fact that it's telling you you can't send it, like if it were muktzah, then it's not a question of not sending it. You would say you can't move it, right? The if you think that it's muktzah and you can't handle it at all, then when are you telling me that you can't send it as a gift? You should tell me you can't handle it at all. So we conclude from that you can handle it, but you can't wear it, and therefore on Yom Tov, and therefore you can't send it as a gift. Next thing in the Mishnah was lo minol she'eino tafur. You can't send an unsewn shoe. Pshita, that's obvious, isn't it? You know, not something that you can use without sewing, and you can't sew on Yom Tov. Even if it's partly sewn, like even if the material is held together by, I don't know, by clothespins or something. And so perhaps you would think that the sewing is not prohibited because it's already attached, even if only temporarily. So the answer is no, that you still can't sew these shoes, and therefore you can't send them as gifts on Yom Tov. Rabbi Yehuda says, when you can't send this is in the Mishnah, you can't send a white shoe to Tanya. Rabbi Yehuda says you can send a black shoe. But you can't send a white shoe. Beitzah hagir, because you need to, before anybody would wear it, they would dye it, right? Rabbi Yossi Omer b'shachar, Osar b'shachar. Rabbi Yossi says you can't even send a black shoe because you still have to smooth it out. Like if it's a brand new shoe, nobody's going to wear it without kind of scraping it, rubbing it, whatever, finishing the product, and that you can't do on Yom Tov. Below plige, but they're not arguing. Mar Kiasre, as we saw before, there's different customs in different places. Pasri Demar Bisra Latachas, where the way they made shoes in the place of Rabbi Yehuda, the you're making this out of leather, right? Out of cowhide. So the flesh side of the cowhide was inside the shoe, so you didn't need to smooth it out. And Basri Damar, Bisrael El, but in where Rabbi Yossi lived, they did it the other way around. So you had to kind of scrape off or smooth off the shoe to finish it before using it. Zaklal, the Mishnah said in the end, this is the rule. Kol sheneosin bo b'yom tov, anything that you can use on Yom Tov, you can send to somebody else on Yom Tov. In other words, it doesn't need a forbidden activity to make it useful. So Rav Sheshes shar lahul Rabbanan l'shadurei tefillin b'yom tov. Rav Sheshes said to people, he permitted people to send tefillin to somebody on Yom Tov. So you don't wear tefillin on Yom Tov, so how come you could send it? It's not something they can use on Yom Tov. Our answer is Hachikar, is what the Mishnah says. If it's a finished product, so that it could be used, if it were a weekday, then you can send it on Yom Tov. So now it appears that the issue is you're not giving something to someone that will encourage him to do a forbidden activity on Yom Tov, right? If I send you a shoe that still needs to be completed on Yom Tov, then that's encouraging you to finish it. But if I send you tefillin, right? Tefillin, although you're not supposed to wear them on Yom Tov, but you don't need to do anything to finish them, right? It's already a finished product, so then there's not a concern. It's a bit of a fine line. Like, why would you send something? Why would you be allowed to send something to someone that he couldn't use, even if it's finished? I don't quite get that. And what about the spiked sandals, right? You could wait till after Yom Tov and use them then. So that's a little unclear. The thing about tefillin is, it's not like you're forbidden to wear them on Yom Tov. You're exempt from wearing them on Yom Tov. So that might be a mitigating factor. Amar Abaye says, now we're going to tangentially go on, talk about tefillin for a little bit. Tefillin hol v'yasi liyadan. Since we're already talking about tefillin, name Lahu Milson. Let me say something about tefillin. Tefillin barasha. If you're on the road and it's about to be Shabbos and you're wearing your tefillin, and you're still on the road, and the sun sets and now it's Shabbos, you cover them with your hand until you get home. So in other words, you don't want to appear like you're wearing tefillin on Shabbos, because that's not something that is done. So you kind of put your hand on top of them or cover them with your hand or whatever, then until you get home, and then you take them off. What if you're sitting in the study hall and you're wearing your tefillin, and you didn't realize it got dark and Shabbos began? So same thing, cover it with your hand until you get home. Here's a brisa that says if you're on the road, tefillin barosha, and you're wearing your tefillin on your head, and Shabbos begins. You cover them. Why don't you take them off right away? Well, you can't leave your tefillin out in the street or out on the road, because they need to be put in a safe place, right, where they're not going to be disrespected or perhaps stolen. So you cover them until you get to a secure location, the house closest to the wall, and then leave them there. So that's presumably a place where they can be secure. So take them off at your first practical opportunity, is what I say. If you're sitting in the study hall and it becomes Shabbos, maniach yad al lam ad shemagil b'bayis samach lebeis midrash. Then you cover them until you get to the house that's closest to the study hall. Why you don't just take them off in the study hall? I don't get that. Like, what safer place could there be for tefillin?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe they didn't have locks.
People leave their tefillin in the study hall, no?
Right? Exactly. Yeah, of course they do. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure of the circumstances here. But anyway, but the point is, the first Brysa we had, the statement by Bai says you can wear them until you get home. And this source says that wear them only until the first opportunity you have to take them off, not all the way home. So where is it? Look, Hasha, no problem. Ha de mintera, ha de lo mintera. It depends. If it's a house with a lock that you could leave it at, even the buyer would agree. What the buyer is saying is that take them home because he's assuming that there isn't any secure place that you can leave them on the way. Idlo mintra my area barosha, afilu machtan ba'araname. So where it says if that's the case, like why are you telling me a case of somebody if you're wearing your tefillin, even if, let's say you're walking along, you see a pair of tefillin on the ground, and you want to, pick them up and take them somewhere safe. So it's not, even if you're just wearing the tefillin and you're still wearing them, so then cover them. Even if you find a fresh pair of tefillin, you should pick them up and take them, right? That's not a mosek tefillin. Machnisan zugug. If you find tefillin in the, out and about on Shabbos, so you wear them one at a time to bring them into the city, right? Because you can't carry them if it's outside, out in the sticks. But you can wear things. So you put them on one pair at a time. You wear it into the city. You take it off. You go back for the next pair. So if that's the case, like why is the saying specifically if you happen to be wearing tefillin? Well, kasha is not a problem. Ha demintra machmas ganave machmas kalve. Ha demintra machmas kalve. In one case, we're worried about both thieves and dogs. In the other case, we're worried only about dogs. Okay, so in the case where the Brysa that says that put your tefillin in the first secure location, that's where you're worried about both dogs and robbers. But if you're just worried about dogs, then you need extra security. So there could be a case where, yeah, you'll find a house that dogs couldn't get into because they can't reach the knob, but it doesn't have a lock, so thieves could get in. So modern time our rove, at least in Yisrael, I might have thought that, oh, don't worry about it. Most thieves are Jews and they're not going to disrespect someone. Not the case that there are. I'm not sure if it's saying that even if the thieves are Jews, they'd still disrespect tefillin, or there could be non-Jews that are thieves that are going to disrespect your tefillin. Okay, and on that we will.
We'll enough for today.
Yeah. Okay, so tomorrow we will begin the second chapter.
Thank you, Dov. Have a good day.
Okay, you too.